Welcome back to The Grind. In this video, we are going to talk about how to defeat Apocalypse. This is the Uncollected difficulty, however, so it may seem a bit easier. The main things we'll touch on is he starts off with 4 persistent charges, which means he is stun immune, and his light attacks will stun you unless you do a well-timed block. And we'll show that in the clips coming up. He also develops immunity to bleed, incinerate, and disorient debuffs after they've been on him for 8 seconds. And if the opponent evades, he gains a 10% chance to bypass evade. So after 10 evades, you can no longer evade at all. The rest of his abilities are more relevant for when you're using him on offense, and I didn't find that they are worth noting for the fight against him when he is the boss. Now, as far as nodes and buffs, none of them are really that important except the foresight, which is awesome. If you intercept him when he's dashing, you get a 200% fury, which is very useful. All right, so the first thing we'll point out is the stun immunity. You cannot stun him with a parry, and if you try to block a light attack, he will stun you. So you really want to avoid blocking because you don't want to be stunned. Now, if you intercept an attack, you do get that fury buff, which is very beneficial for increasing the damage output, and it refreshes with every time you intercept his dash with a basic attack. Now, if you stop your combo at the 4th hit and dash back, oftentimes he will dash in, and if you dash forward again right away, you will be able to intercept and get another fury buff. And this is due to Apocalypse's aggressive playstyle. And as often as you can, you want to chain on your special attacks with that fury buff to optimize the amount of damage you can put out. Now, after being affected by bleed, disorient, and incinerate for 8 seconds, he will develop immunity to those debuffs. Now let's talk about the special attacks of Apocalypse. They are challenging to evade, and they have multiple hits which can lead you to take a lot of block damage, but they can be fully evaded. It's just extremely challenging. So with Ghost Rider, I was able to dodge the full special 1, and you can see right before it fires, you want to do your first dodge so that you have enough time to dodge the next shot. But this is very challenging, and I was not able to reliably get the hang of it, so I usually would just block part of the hits and then dodge the final shot. Now with this special 2, I believe it can be fully evaded as well, but it is also very challenging, and so I ended up just blocking some of the hits and then making sure you dodge back at the end for those last 2 up close hits. Now, how I usually dealt with it is I would block the first 2 shots and then dash back to avoid the last shot so I could counter and attack him more easily. And now the same with the special 2, I would block those shots and then dash back to avoid the final hit. So champions with high health pools or that can heal will help to reduce the amount of damage you take. Now, how to fight and who to use. The main problem with Apocalypse is not the nodes, it's actually that he's stun immune. So you want to be able to work around stun immunity because you don't want to have to block and get stunned by his light attacks. So what I do is bait out heavy attacks without taking any block damage, and you do that by attacking into him and then blocking very briefly and then dashing back. And if you get hit, you want to try to dash back as soon as you can so you don't take that light attack which will stun you. Putting up that block briefly does often trigger them to throw a heavy. You just want to make sure to dash back quickly so you don't get hit, especially if he goes to attack into you with a medium or light attack instead. Now, since Apocalypse is #metal, you can use Magneto to easily take him down. The problem is Magneto relies on heavy attacks, and so you have to be comfortable with baiting out Apocalypse's heavies and heavy attacking in return. And this can be challenging, especially to build up the charges at the end. And you can see I only got up to 20 stacks of those charges here, but you'll see that it was still very effective. And now, since I have not applied any bleed on Apocalypse yet, he does take bleed damage, and I think the fact that he's metal is reducing his ability to go immune to the bleeds. And so you can see the damage is really strong, and because it is shrapnel, when it expires, it does an insane amount of damage and easily takes the remainder of Apocalypse's health. Now, while Apocalypse is stun immune, he is not debuff immune, so you can still use passive stuns. And with champions like Wasp or Doom, if you can get that Fury buff from intercepting and then chain on a heavy attack with the passive stun, you can get some crazy damage. Wasp at rank 1 6-star did over 13,000, and then Doom crit with a 19,000 with that Fury buff. So that can be a very helpful way to get some high damage output. Now also, because of Apocalypse's villain status, you can use Blade with the Ghost Rider synergy to get a little bit of extra damage as well as reduced ability accuracy, but you still do have to play around that stun immunity, and you do lose out on some of the bleed damage once he goes immune. However, you can still get some really high damage output, especially if you intercept and get that bonus Fury. And because you can heal with Blade while blocking, you can avoid dying from all the chip damage by blocking the special attacks. And so I was quite easily able to survive and one-shot Apocalypse several times using Blade, but I have used Blade a lot and have become quite comfortable using him in various fights. Now, another option is to use champions with power control so you don't take as much block damage from his special attacks. This isn't the best show of that, but Warlock does have the ability to control power with his special 1 or his special 3. So the more you power drain, the less you have to block his special attacks, and that will help with your total health pool. But the single most useful skill for me in a fighting Apocalypse was the ability to bait out heavy attacks without having to take any block damage. So if you want to look back and rewatch that again, or check out my other video on the channel with how to bait out heavy attacks and specials, it does go into more detail on that, and I think it will save you a lot of frustration and items. So I will put that link in the description. I hope this video was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.